Nigeria's defense headquarters has called for the support of citizens in its war against terrorism and criminality. The Director of Defense Media Operations, while giving an update on the war against crime, says that troops have made considerable gains in the last 2 weeks, neutralizing scores of terrorists, elements in the northeast, and curbing of oil theft in the south of the country. News Central's Amadine Uyi has more.
The weekly operational update of the Defense Headquarters of Nigeria. The Director of Defense Media Operations informed newsmen that so much gain has been achieved across the country in the war against terrorists and criminal elements. He says over 19 terrorists were neutralized, while another 21 arrested and 8 abducted citizens rescued by troops of Operation Hardened Kai. He also adds that much was achieved in the southern parts of the country in the war against oil theft and maritime crime.
Troops of Operation Delta Sea recovered over 570,000 liters of stolen crude oil, over 454,000 liters of illegally refined AGO, and 10,000 liters of DPK. Additionally, troops discovered and destroyed over 240 dugout pits, over 60 storage tanks, and 50 illegal refining sites, among others. Troops also neutralized 4 criminals, apprehended 51 involved in oil theft and other criminal elements.
The director informed newsmen of efforts against criminal elements in the southeastern part of the country, where 6 suspected members of the proscribed group, the indigenous people of Biafra, were neutralized, while another 14 arrested. He says the military is committed to fulfilling its constitutional mandate, but counts on the support of citizens.
Going by the outcome of ongoing operations across the country, it is clear that the military is ready, the military is capable, and the military is eager to continue its mission of securing the country by the destruction of the terrorists, by the destruction of the extremists, as well as the destruction of insurgents. The armed forces is therefore counting on the support of the citizens of this country, particularly in the area of public opinion. We are in this war together and should see ourselves encouraging our troops to win the war. The gallant men and women of the armed forces continue to put themselves in harm's way to ensure the safety and the security of citizens.
He also adds that 16 terrorists were neutralized in the northwestern parts of the country, with another 16 arrested. Amadine Uyi, reporting for News Central.
Well, thanks to Amadine Uyi for that report. Yes, the fight against insurgency and terrorism still exists in Nigeria. May not be as intense as it used to be. The numbers, of course, are a lot less these days, but it doesn't take away the fact that it still does exist. But there's a couple of things that I feel like, you know, everyone should be aware of, and that is how maybe we should also get to realize that the Nigerian Army and security agencies maybe need to change. Okay, maybe not change their approach, but the Nigerian government itself needs to understand that certain things need to be changed with regards to the fight against insurgency. If we continue to rely on strictly kinetic means, bigger guns and bigger trucks and bigger armored personnel carriers, that really may never end, you know, terrorism. We've been talking about terrorism since about 2010 or 2009 with the Boko Haram sect and then ISWAP and the likes. And it looks like a very, just look at the video on your screen, a very dehumanizing situation. We've lost thousands of Nigerian army personnel and soldiers. We've lost policemen. We've lost, members of other security agencies to this fight. It's a very, very terrible situation. But what I'm saying is, we cannot strictly rely on only kinetic means. There has to be other things that must be brought into this fight. And one of them, of course, has to be the improvement in the infrastructure, the security infrastructure that we have in Nigeria. Improvement in the level of technology and the use of technology in the fight against insurgency. The improvement in the level of information and information gathering that we use in the fight against insurgency. But also the fight against poverty. Because these persons that we are calling terrorists, that the government every 2 weeks says that they have neutralized 50, neutralized 30, neutralized 27, why don't these groups ever run out of more people to be neutralized? The reason is that there's an increasing number, and of course statistics with poverty, and there's always people who will be recruited into the terrorism groups across Nigeria. It's never going to end if we keep our situation like that in northern Nigeria. We will continue to have more people recruited, and also Nigeria's borders still have not been fixed. How do these people get into the country? How do these weapons get into the country? How do they get these high number of AK-47s to these people every single day?
And then we haven't even talked about the security, the monies that have been allocated to fight insecurity and that have been, the ones that haven't been used for the right reasons. Till today, for example, we never heard anything about Dasuki Gate. Right.
I mean, those are, so my point is that there's a ton of, different angles that need to be addressed. And what we are doing now, we will do it for the next 10 years.
Every day, maybe every 2 weeks, 50 people have been...
Exactly. And we would never really get to, set targets for ourselves or be able to... we've achieved a lot, and I'll give them credit. And,
yes.
For even the lives that have been lost in this battle, of course, we must respect them. But other things must be added, like you said. The funds that have been used, can we properly investigate that they're used properly? Technology, information, fighting poverty, fixing Nigeria's borders. There are many other things that must come into play if we really want to live in a safe and secure country.
Yeah, but just to once again reiterate what Osagie said and to say thank you to our armed forces who continuously put themselves at risk to protect our territorial integrity. We're thankful to you and thankful to your families for the sacrifices that you have to make.
Oh, well. Now, let's take the conversation away from the fight against terrorism. Nigeria's judiciary has come under intense scrutiny following the recent, the last elections, the 2023 elections that produced governors, House of Representative members, members of the National Assembly, and of course, a candidate of the All Progressive Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as president. However, the judiciary has been busy handling election petition cases post-election. The outcome of some of these tribunal sittings has led to mixed reactions from a cross-section of Nigerians. Most notable is what occurred in Nasarawa yesterday, where the Court of Appeal overturned the judgment of the Nasarawa State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal, which had declared David Ombugadu, the governorship candidate of the PDP, as the winner of the governorship election.
The nullification of the election of Governor Caleb Mutfwang in Plateau State, the confusion following the appeal court's certified judgment that affirmed the Kano governor's election after it was upturned, and many others. Now, what is supposed to be the last hope of the common man is starting to wear a new face, leaving citizens worried about the country's state of the judiciary, worrying if it has been politicized. What does this mean for politics? What more is expected? We have with us this morning politician, political commentator, and analyst, Mr. Ezekiel Nya-Etuk. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
All right. I would ask, there's so many instances to look at. We've seen what's happened in Nasarawa State. We've seen what's happening in Kano State. And there are a number of states like that who have Supreme Court, well, they haven't gotten to Supreme Court yet, but who have cases that have gone back and forth. First of all, I'd ask, what your thoughts are as regarding the role that the judiciary has played so far. Some have said that the last hope of the common man has become the lost hope of the common man. Is that a position that you agree with or not?
Yeah, we are discussing an issue that is extremely sensitive, but we seem to be, it's like you have a loaded gun and the children are playing with it, and we are, you know, busy shouting, oh, the children are playing, that gun is loaded and everything. The thing we need to understand is that, number one, if any of the shots is released, the child is going to die. We need to know that. And secondly, we need to know that it is incumbent upon us to do everything practically possible to take that gun from the child or children as fast as possible. Why am I saying this? You know, the place of the judiciary, I don't think we seem to, as a people, appreciate how dire the consequences are of a judiciary where the citizens have lost hope in it. It simply means that sooner than later, we are going to become a lawless, you know, country. And the prognoses are innumerable. Number one, we are going to discover that even this issue of our economy, nobody comes to invest in a country where you are not sure of the rule of law, or being able to get not just judgment, but also justice. So the time has come when two main institutions must be looked into, not by the government, not by the National Assembly, but first by the office of the citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I'm launching this campaign and I can't talk enough about it. We are expecting a cat to bark or a dog to meow. The problem is not with a cat that cannot bark. The problem is with a man who has senses and he knows that a cow meows and he wants a cat to bark. We are carrying our raw yam and giving to a goat. And we are coming back and we are surprised that the goat has eaten the raw yam. The problem is not with the goat, it is with you. Knowing that a goat is expected to eat raw yam. Why am I saying all this? Not long ago, we went to the polls to elect the people that we expect something from. How did you elect them? You collected their money. They sold their houses. They mortgaged their conscience. They did unethical things. For you to give them power, you willingly collected those things and you surrendered your sovereignty to them. And these are the same people you want them to adjust the laws so that the right kind of people can come into the National Assembly to change the laws. How is that going to happen? Who is not thinking here? Am I the one that is just maybe going wacko or something? Is there something wrong with me? Number two, we need to draw a line very, very carefully between INEC and the judiciary. The role of INEC is to ensure that the majority votes count. That is the role of the of INEC, to ensure that the majority votes. Number one, to ensure that the right people are on the ballot. And number two, that on election day, the majority votes carry the day. Those are the primary roles of INEC, not of the court. The role of the court does not know who was majority, does not know who was minority. No, that's not their role. The role of the court is to look at the law and say, sir, we understand you scored the majority votes, but that's not our problem. You did not meet the basic criteria of being in the race. For instance, you know, evidence shows that you don't have certificate, you don't have the basic education. Evidence shows that you are not a Nigerian. Evidence shows that you are not sponsored by a party. Whatever vote you gathered, if you flout any of these four fundamental constitutional provisions and rules, you are removed. Yeah, that is the law. Now, no, let me just end so that now the last part is where the judiciary is now becoming something that people can't understand what is going on. If you apply the same rule to everybody, no matter whose ox is God, nobody will say anything. But if you have different standards of rules for different people, then you betray the essence of the word justice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for many people is the problem. You know, the part where it seems like the rules are different, you know, for different, you know, people or for different parties and whatnot. But would you agree that, you know, this isn't restricted to just the judiciary. For those who complain about judicial ruling so far, this is not restricted to the judiciary alone. It's a general problem. Because I did mention earlier that if INEC was able to carry out elections, just like we saw in Liberia or we've seen in other African countries, carry out the kind of elections that you almost have nothing to doubt with the process, then the judiciary would have less work to do with these tribunals. So what are we seeing a situation where the dysfunctionality of Nigeria as a state affects every single part of, being a Nigerian, and that includes the electoral process? And so when you get to the judiciary also, you would also, meet the same dysfunctional system over there. Is this what we are seeing? Or are we seeing just the judiciary, with these allegations of being corrupt?
You see, I'll tell you this. I am an unrepentant believer in the Nigeria project. The day I stop to hope, I start to die. That's what I told myself. So I am an unrepentant believer in the Nigeria project. That is why I have sat down and studied very, very carefully where we are today and how we arrived at where we are today and how we can get out of where we are today, because where we are is what is least expected, least acceptable. We have become effectively the poverty capital of the world, one of the most blessed nations on the face of the earth. I say this and I say it with every sense of responsibility. I have traveled, I'm on my 7th international passport. There's hardly any part of the world I've not gone to and spent some reasonable amount of, informed time looking around. And I will tell you this, that there is nowhere in the world that you go to and look at the top system without finding Nigerians there at the highest possible level. Nigerians are, outside of probably the Jews, we are the most endowed, we are the most hardworking, we are the most creative, we are the most innovative, we are the most, Nigeria. And yet, what a contradiction. It's like an oxymoron that we have become the poverty capital of the world. And in Nigeria, our biggest problem is leadership. Where more often than not, the worst of us lead the rest of us. And it is the Bible says it's an error that the princes are walking on foot and the slaves are on horseback. The time has come when we need to ask ourselves some very hard fundamental questions. I'll tell you this, and I say it with every sense of responsibility. The problem of Nigeria is not the problem of leadership, the way everybody has said. It's not. The problem of Nigeria is not the problem of leadership. Why do I say so? I give you the responsibility of getting me a mechanic to fix my car. You go and bring an incompetent mechanic, and I now heap all the blame on the incompetent mechanic. Shouldn't the blame come to you that I invested with the responsibility of getting me a mechanic to fix my car? What does that prognosticate? There you are as a citizen, and the time comes to say, please come and elect a leader for us. You go and compromise. We have months of, including the media. Last week or 2 weeks back, I did an open letter to the editors who gathered in Uyo. And I said, editors, with all due respect, you are the problem of Nigeria. The media is the problem of Nigeria. The citizen, the office of the citizen is led by the media. That is why the media is given that title of the fourth estate of the realm. They set opinion. Why is it that in the last election, only 2 parties, were you looking for who can win or who can lead? Those are 2 different things. Does the media focus on who can win or who can lead? To the extent that a friend of mine told me that even if you bring a goat to PDP and a dog to APC, Architect Nya-Etuk, They will choose either the goat or the dog over you because they are in either APC or PDP. Think about that statement.
Yeah.
It's the worst indictment you can give to a human being.
Yeah.
Now that comes to, let's just rest on this. This comes to focusing on the man that chooses the leader, and that is the office of the citizen. We need to start having a new line of conversation on the office of the citizen.
All right. So many things to talk about. Osa Oge has some thoughts regarding that, but I want to ask you, let's get into the meat of today's conversation. For example, we've been looking at the role of the judiciary and the judiciary's role in all the elections, the elections in the various states and in the country. Yesterday and the day before, the country was thrown into a state of confusion as the judgment that was given, the verdict that was given sacking the Kano State governor, certified true copies of the judgment was found to contradict what was being said by the judges, which they have now come out to say is a clerical error. Is that, that's of course the certified true copy, Governor Abba Yusuf, having been sacked by the court, has been, the decision has been upheld by the Court of Appeal. Of course, this will get to the Supreme Court. But I want to find out what your thoughts are. Hearing that the court comes to say that it's a clerical error, is that a defense that can stand?
My case is different. I had a mother who I effectively didn't have much of a father, but I had a mother who dropped out in primary 3. So you can tag her to have been an illiterate of some sort. But she gave her life to ensure that I went to school. So for me, the most important thing about me is my brain. I don't joke. I don't joke that my brain is the most important part of me. And I feel insulted that a man will come out and talk to me because I'm a citizen and tell me that what happened was a clerical error for good.
All right, Mr. Nya-Etuk, we seem to have a little struggle with the connection there, but of course, we will try to reconnect with you and see if we can continue the conversation. It's mostly centered around the issues in Nigeria's judiciary today. It's been accused of, being all sorts. Some people even describe it as crooked. And so, do we currently have a lot of things to fix? And of course, will the issues that we currently have with the Nigerian judiciary affect us going forward? Mr. Nya-Etuk, welcome back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sorry, my internet. I say that it is an insult on my intellect and the collective intellect of Nigerians for a man to say that what happened was a clerical error. Let me tell you something. I used this example before, I'll tell it again. The word fiend, F-I-E-N-D, is different from the word friend, F-R-I-E-N-D, R missing. Now, it is easy for me to say, sorry, there was a mistake. I intended to write friend and not fiend. Anybody can say, okay, yeah, it must have been a typo. Secondly, if you look at, I don't know which other good example I can bring. Now, I had an interview once where I said relevant experience. But when they transcribed it, they put elephant experience. Now, you can forgive me if I say that that was a typo, that I intended to say relevant and not elephant. But when I say that in the studio, there are 2 people, the anchors are male and female. For me, I prefer the male because he has the competencies and the strength to do the work. I now write another paragraph and say, in the studio, there are 2 anchors, the male and the female. For me, I prefer the female because I generally find females to be more reliable, on account of which I'll find it easier to deal with, relate with, and trust the female. It so happens that I had written these 2 statements, and at the end of the day, I probably tell my secretary, take that of the female. Okay? And then my secretary, forgetting, put both male statement, I prefer the male, and the next paragraph, I prefer the female. And God, in his infinite mercies, makes sure that nobody spots it. And then it is now published and released as a CTC. And then you turn around and tell me it was a clerical error. It could not have been a clerical error because it was a well-defined statement with consequences. First, you give it to APC against NNPP. Next, you give it to NNPP and award cost to APC. And you call that a clerical error? How is it possible, bros? It's not possible now. You had two judgments. And why on earth, that's in my considered opinion, why on earth will a judge have two judgments? It means that there's something. And, you know, it's like playing the ostrich, where you hide yourself in the sand, your head, and your whole body is exposed, and you think you are hiding. There's something about the judiciary that we have come to see. Now, I say this feeling really bad for the few that have integrity. I've come across, you know, I took part in the last election. I went as high as to the Supreme Court, my case went. And I saw justices, I saw judges that were incorruptible. And in the face of absolute provocation and inducement, they stood their grounds. And without knowing anybody, I got justice at the highest level against the almighty PDP, APC, and the rest. I won. So I saw people like that. But I've also sat down and looked at certain things, even as concerning me in that place. How my case is taken and kept for 40 days when you know there's a 60-day window. And I'm running and ranting, and they just carried cotton wool and put in their ears for 40 days. I couldn't even get a hearing for a 60-day period. So much so that by the time I eventually got my judgment, the case was, it came a day after the 60 days. And as a result, it has to be thrown out. For goodness sake, where is the justice? How was that my fault? But what am I trying to say? Our whole justice system needs to be reviewed. But you said something which is instructive. By the time INEC does its work, there will be much less work for the judiciary to do. And at the same time, whenever it comes back to the judiciary, I beseech them by the mercies of God that rather than this country go the way that they want, God will remove them. However he does it, I couldn't care less. But the time has come when we need to, you know, the Bible says that the kingdom of God suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. The time has come when we must become spiritually violent and make certain pronouncements that must come to be, and let people sleep and not wake up.
Well, I don't know if that would work.
No, it will work. It will work. It will work. Nigeria cannot go down because of these people.
Yeah, we can pray down the exchange rate if that was possible. You know, we could also pray, you know, that our refineries come alive. You know,
I understand what you mean.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that would work. But the point is, you know, we obviously have a lot of challenges with these institutions that must be addressed.
There's a place of divine intervention in the affairs of man. That's our last hope, not the judiciary. Our last hope has become divine intervention. And for the sake of you and I, it will happen.
Well, we'll see. But the point is, you know, we are currently, of course, having to deal with the you know, results, you know, of some of these judicial rulings that, you know, will affect Nigeria going forward. You know, from what a lot of people have analyzed, they say that these things will eventually come back, you know, the chickens will come home to roost, you know, in a couple of years after these rulings. What would you advise, you know, if you were on any of the judicial boards, the NBA or the NJC or any of them, what would your advice be if we were hoping to clean up Nigeria's judiciary?
The very first thing is, I'll tell Nigerians to wake up and say enough is enough. The day that, you see, there's a way government works. Government operates on what you call the lines of least resistance. And government, you look at the judiciary, you look at the executive, you look at the legislature. So within the judiciary, which is what you're talking about, the day that they know that the average Nigerian has it up to here, they'll stop playing games with us. So I want to ask that rather than embark on a spiritual violent takeover, the administrators of our legal processes should please get back home. I've been listening to a lot of them. I'm privileged to belong in a lot of their groups. I don't know how they got me there, but a lot of their main groups, I'm privileged to have been added, and I see conversations coming out, people starting to proffer solutions, people starting to say this has got to stop, enough is enough. I'm encouraging them, and I want them to know that righteousness exalts a nation. Bible says so, and that righteousness is do rightness. We have had enough. People are suffering. People are suffering in this country, and for the sake of the masses, let them just cool down and do the right thing. That's number one. Number two, I want to tell the Nigerians, I want to be more focused on the office of the citizens. Nigerians, we can't leave our destiny in the hands of these people who have been there for state capture. Unfortunately, we let them have it from us. But for whatever is worth, the time has come when women and men of imagination and patriotic instincts should stand up and speak out. Failure to speak at a time like this, silence is no longer golden. Silence is being complicit. And when what is coming comes, it will sweep you along with it.
Yeah, but can the judiciary defend themselves by saying that they haven't actually done anything wrong? They've really just worked with the evidence presented before them. There are certain technicalities here and there that
no. When you apply double standards, it's not evidence presented before you. I started by saying that the judiciary looks at the points of law. So a lot of times a man, I'll tell you, 10 people in a race. Now the race says don't wear black. Do you understand me? Don't wear glasses. Out of the 10, the first one had 1,000 out of 1,200. So he like, bam, and the rest of them like that. Then you go to the court. INEC has already given it to these people. You go to the court. The court says, they say don't wear black. You wore black. So the first man that wore black that had 1,000, bam, you're off. They say don't wear glasses. 4 of the rest of you that wore glasses, you are off. As a result, on technical grounds, on points of law, not technical grounds, valid points of law, they knock out 8 people. Number 9 that had only 50 votes out of 2,000 is declared the winner. Everyone starts to shout, whoa, whoa, he had only 2 votes. But the point is the law did not come there to count votes. The law counted compliance, and these people didn't comply because the umpire, INEC, did not do his job. The job of the judiciary is not to look at the number of votes you had, is to look at compliance. But on the other hand, the judiciary must apply the same standard for everybody. It is at that point that the citizens will be able to understand and say, okay, law is different from INEC, points of law is different from, the votes that you counted. When they have that eye closed, when the lady has the eyes closed and he doesn't understand, he doesn't hear whether it's APC or PDP or who, but he looks at points of law, I am with the judiciary on that. Please don't talk about who scored more votes where the judiciary is concerned. Hold INEC on who scored more votes. But judiciary, please, for whatever it's worth, have the same standard, the same criteria for everybody. If it gives to PDP, give it to him. If it gives to ADC, give it to him. Don't want to bend the law to suit somebody. That is called favoritism, and that is against the spirit of the law.
All right.
Once we understand that, yes.
Okay, let's look also, I'd like you to react to the calls for the actual enforcement of the independence of the judiciary. as the judiciary as you see it, would you say it's independent enough? The act calls for the actual independence of the judiciary. Okay. Would you say that as the judiciary is, it's independent enough? Are you also of the position that the executive should be completely removed from, affairs of appointing judges, and they should be completely removed from the process involving the judiciary's establishment?
Two things. The very first thing is that for the optics, I agree that we must bring ourselves to a point where the judiciary is appointed based on certain parameters that will not make for compromise or for perceived compromise. Because there was a president called President Goodluck Jonathan. He appointed a man called Professor Jega because he was a man that believes in do-rightness. So, but not every president can be like President Jonathan. So to avoid that, let that process be handled through a transparent auditing process. So to that extent, I agree. But I want to say something. If you have a man of integrity, no matter who appoints you, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, and you are trained over the years to believe in justice and equity, that's number one. Number two, when you look at the question of independence of the judiciary, I think that the judiciary is a minimum of 80% independent. And I will say this with every sense of responsibility. How does the executive tell you to give a judgment to Mr. B? Are you a rubber stamp? Do you not subscribe to certain oaths and ethics of the profession that you profess? At all times, the executive will always want to have something. It is left to the integrity of the men in the judiciary. So, there's a way you look at let me come down to contemporary terms. There's a way you look at a lady, and you can't even say anything to that lady other than to give her respect. Hello, because you look at the dressing, she is decent, she carries herself very well. Do you understand me? It will take a wacko of a guy to want to go and be funny with her. But on the other hand, you see another lady, everything about her dressing says, come, 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 come. You have the impetus to approach her. They are still certain, a friend of mine said something, we'll probably rest around this side. A friend of mine said something, he said, in the judiciary, when you want certain kind of judgment, you don't call certain lawyers or certain judges or certain justices. Because those people, what I've just said, an average man sitting down there understanding me, some names are already dropping in the person's head. Once they call this justice, forget it. The man no go inside, no go, don't even as much as think of approaching him to do something unethical. But when they want to do deals, they know the judges, they know the justices, they know the lawyers to approach. A friend of mine once said, don't look for the lawyer that knows the law. Look for the lawyer that knows the judge. Okay. And that statement sounded like a joke, but for me, it was a statement that I think the judiciary need to think about it.
Yeah, the danger, is really, existing in a country that has zero faith, zero trust in its judiciary. It's a scary thing to think about, because first of all, Nigerians had lost faith, to a large extent in their executive. To a large extent, they had lost faith in their National Assembly, to speak on their behalf. And we've had successive National Assemblies that seem to be getting worse. The 9th National Assembly, arguably, from a lot of people, is one of the worst that we've seen. And so Nigerians have lost faith in the National Assembly to speak on their behalf. This new National Assembly now, it seems to be even, turning a blind eye to what Nigerians are saying, with, purchasing cars for 160 million naira, and really not just listening to what Nigerians are saying. It feels like, they are tone deaf to what Nigerians are saying. And so Nigerians have also lost faith in that aspect. And so it's scary to think that they will also lose faith in the judiciary also, and know that if you go to court, the chances of you getting the victory that you deserve or the justice that you deserve, may not be possible. It's scary. But Mr. Nya-Etuk, there's a lot of work to be done.
Let me just say my last word.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Just say my last word. For as long as we fail to understand the 3 C's, we'll continue to be where we are today. The chances that come your way, like election time, the choices that you make, and the inevitable concomitants that we call the consequences. Chances that come your way, choices that you make, and the consequences of your choices. If you lose faith in the current legislature, who put them there? You took a chance, you made a choice, you must live with the consequence of your choice.
All right. Mr. Nya-Etuk, thank you so much for your time with us this morning. I wish you a wonderful rest of the weekend. I will look forward to having more positive conversations in this regard.